Hi, hello, and welcome to another episode of The Dunker Spot. We are part of 342 Productions. I am your host, Nekias Duncan, and joining me as always is my co-host, Steve Jones Jr. Steve, how are you doing, sir?
Aha, feeling good, feeling great. Happy to be here, excited to be here. Thank you, Dunkers, for once again embracing your bounce. YouTube, hi. Thank you for your support. Dunker Nation, let's ride. Nekias, feeling good, feeling sharp. Apparently, some things we got to talk about to make sure we last for a very long time. It's all about the Jimmies and Joes, But Nekias, real quick, how are you feeling?
I'm doing okay. Had a little bit of a headache Friday, some weekend shenanigans, but doing well, feeling better.
You got energy today?
Yeah, we good.
All right. Horsepower?
Good to go. Oh, here we go.
Horsepower. Oh, that polo on, you got horsepower. Nekias, it's time to hoop it up.
That is a tremendous setup. You know what? You got it, big dog. Well done. Glad to have you with me. Glad that you are feeling better. So I appreciate you. We got some basketball to talk about. We got game 2 of the NBA Finals to happen on Sunday night, recording on a Monday. You're going to see this on a Tuesday, so, apologies there, whatever the case may be. Either way, the Boston Celtics taking a 2-0 series lead over the Dallas Mavericks, a 105-98 victory. If game 1 was the Jaylen Brown game with the Kristaps Porzingis first quarter sprinkled in there, obviously had an overall good game there. If we're calling game 1 the Jaylen Brown game 2 probably has to be dubbed the Jrue Holiday game. 26 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, had a steal on the block, and even the stock numbers don't really do justice to the kind of defensive game that he had in that one. The timeliness of the steal in particular was fun. But a big night for Jrue, 21 and 7 assists for Jaylen Brown, though he did have 6 turnovers. 18 points, 9 rebounds, 12 assists, a playoff high for Jayson Tatum, one off of his career high in terms of the assist, had a steal as well. Once again, didn't shoot well, but as we'll talk about on the show, the drives continued to hit for the Boston Celtics. 18 for Derek White, 12 for Kristaps Porzingis. Getting some imaging done on the right leg and recording on a Monday. So by Tuesday, you may have an official report on that front. But expected to get imaging done on the right leg, left midway through the fourth quarter after tweaking it. So hopefully he is okay. 5 and 7 for Al Horford. On your Mavericks side, 32, 11, and 11 for Luka Doncic. 4 steals to go along with that. Kyrie Irving, 16 points, did not make a three-pointer. 7 of 15 inside the arc, 17 for PJ Washington, 13 and 9 for Daniel Gafford, 11 for Derrick Jones Jr., 2.7 boards off the bench for Derek Lively. Stats out of the way, or at least the basic ones, I'll sprinkle them in. As far as a theme for this one, it feels kind of like a continuation of how I felt about game 1 as I just zoom out with these 2 games in general. Boston has just done such a good job of dictating the terms of this series. They have established we are living in the paint. We are going to drive. We are going to put you in rotation. We are going to make your help decisions tough. Though Dallas did make some tweaks defensively to try to keep their bigs close to the basket. We'll talk about that more in depth shortly. Dallas attempted to make some tweaks on both ends of the floor. Ultimately, Boston was still able to get downhill, still able to generate fruitful shots, though they didn't shoot well from 3 in this one. And defensively, even with Luka Doncic having the first quarter and ultimately the first half that he had as a scorer, Boston really didn't bend their principles all that much. They did sprinkle in more help against Luka Doncic in this one, but it has still largely been a 2v2 affair with Luka Doncic in pick and roll. And with Kyrie Irving not having the scoring portion on the table right now, it's allowed Boston to dictate where Dallas is getting their shots from, what Luka Doncic is getting, what Kyrie is getting. And thus, as we zoom out again, with Joe Mazzulla wanting to win the math battle, wanting to set those terms, they've largely been able to do that. More three-pointers attempted, more three-pointers made for the Boston Celtics. Boston with a rim rate over 30 in this one, and people who've been listening to the show for a while know how that's kind of been a sticking point for me when it comes to the Celtics. Can you generate that rim pressure? Can you get downhill and balance out some of the threes being taken? The fact that Boston got to the rim at a high rate in that game too, again, speaks to the drives, but also speaks to the overall intention. I've just come away from this 2-game set really impressed with what Boston's been able to do game plan wise, and they've largely stuck to that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the payoff for the Boston Celtics and the work they've put in all year long and what they've built and what they believe in on both ends of the floor. I mean, they're 2 games away. And I think based off what you say, my mind goes back to the preview for this series that we had and some of the questions that we asked. And Boston's taking care of business. You know, I know there's a lot of chatter about what kind of playoff run this was. They've done their job. They have not allowed Dallas's defense to slow down Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, despite the shooting numbers. I think that they have not allowed Dallas to really set up the same rotations and have that same comfort defensively. And they've done what they're supposed to do on the other end as far as making sure, okay, Luka, these are the shots that you get. And now we upgrade that and we're going to show a little bit more help. So those are the kicks you can make. And Kyrie, we're going to do everything we can to take away your space and make everything tough on you and work to take away your blend of playmaking and shot making. They've driven the ball. The tempo is a little concerning at times in game 2. And we'll dive into that, but they've taken care of business. And that's been really good. I mean, I think when you think about how much Joe Mazzulla has preached the value of spacing in the series, how he's preached their defensive fundamentals, you can see how they've locked in. And as a unit in 2 games, Boston has not been moved off their game plan. And if they're going to be able to drive the basketball to this degree, create these kind of shots, and defend with this kind of conviction, it's just kind of tough.
Mm-hmm. And I think just to bounce off of that, first, quickly to the driving point that both of us have hit on at this point, 66 drives for the Boston Celtics in that game 2, which is a season high for them. Their regular season high was 55. Their postseason high heading into this game was, I think, 58 in the Cleveland series. So again, them being intentional about getting their head down, putting their heads down and getting into the paint and forcing Dallas to do something, forcing Dallas to live with something. If you don't want to show extra help, fine. We're taking these shots at the rim. We're getting fruitful looks. We're getting to the free throw line. If you do commit, here are some of these catch and shoot 3-pointers that, again, in the game 2, largely did not make. But in terms of their overall process and the shots they're able to generate, you feel pretty good if you're Joe Mazzulla, knowing some of the guys that were taking those catch and shoot opportunities and knowing we can knock these down on a consistent basis. If we're going to get these looks in game 3, game 4, game 5, if we have it at this rate, we're going to feel good about what we're getting right now. To that point, as you speak about the level of conviction, and you've talked about this in both of these games, honestly, the way that Boston has made it really tough for Dallas to defend with conviction has been really impressive to me. And I kind of look at, one, just the personnel that Boston has, which is why they've been so good, but the way that they move their pieces around to make help decisions even more difficult. We talked about the containment level on the drives in game 1. That felt better in game 2, but it still wasn't good enough. And you still had a lot of situations to where you had to decide if I'm coming low or if we're just cooked on this possession. And with Boston putting even more strain by saying, Kristaps, you're going to be one pass away, or we're going to space you on the wing. Or let's put this big in the strong side corner, since you generally don't want to help from this spot. We can now open up wider driving lanes. So now you have this same do we or don't we decision to make. But now the person making that decision is not a big. It's not Derek Lively. It's not Daniel Gafford, who was better in game 2 than he was in game 1. Now it's Luka Doncic, you're the low man. Now it's Kyrie, you're the low man, especially when you sprinkle in some of the dunker spot possessions. Like we saw in game 1, wasn't as affected by the numbers in game 2, but they did still sprinkle in that setup and, again, put strain on what Dallas wanted to do. It's just been fun watching Boston kind of live in this state. And I agree with you. You really saw it. Some of the second quarter, you saw it in the second half, where some of the tempo was a little rough for Boston. A lot of, it's 9 on the clock. We've seen one screen as they're trying to poke at stuff. Boston can't live in that world for too long. But the fact that they were able to self-correct, I think, speaks highly to their level of commitment. And again, just how good they are. And then just bouncing back to the drive point really quickly. 40 drives in the game 2 for Dallas. Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown combined for 52. If that's your formula, you're going to have a tough time. And again, this is with Boston not shooting particularly well from deep in the game 2. Just process-wise, that is just a lot of rotations to have to deal with and a lot of decisions to have to make on the move, especially if the containment isn't there. So just impressive stuff from there. From Dallas, I'll pose the question to you. What did you see?
Before you ask, we can keep talking about these drives because they're important. Then you can ask me a Dallas question. My bad. Because I think one of the big things you have to recognize is, again, it's not looking for the home run on that first drive. It's getting to the second, to the third, continuing to poke at Dallas's defense. Because as you mentioned the stat between Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I think Jayson Tatum has had a heck of a series. I don't think Jayson Tatum is shooting the ball very well. I think you can just look that up and point at that and be like, no. I don't think that means that Jayson Tatum is not playing well. And I think the work that he's done all playoffs and the plays that he's been able to generate, and if you look at this series, in particular at the type of drives that he's making, the quick decisions, he's not necessarily playing around with the ball too much. Once he gets in the paint, he is making sure that he engages that last help defender to make sure this opening is there. So I either got my kick or I got a dump off. That's been good. Jaylen Brown, him making quick decisions, both of them, when they get a switch on a big, they go. Quick hesitation, gone. I think that's been a really big, impactful thing. The kicks that he's made, the consistency from Jaylen Brown this playoff run has been huge. I think this is, 6 straight games where he's scored 20 or more and shot 50% or better from the field. Like, that's not easy to do, especially this time of year. So you probably want to give them credit. And I tie it back in a little bit to what Dallas was working to do defensively. I think they worked to find more comfort on defense. You mentioned some of the rotations and how they adjusted to what Boston did, putting a guard at the dunker spot. And, we saw their bigs working to say, hey, let me kick you out of this matchup. I have this low rotation. And Boston was able to move pieces around. And it never, even though Dallas felt more comfortable with those rotations, it didn't take away Boston's efforts to keep those drives up. And so I think that's a really big key. Because if Dallas, we've seen over the course of these last 2 series, when they get into that automatic rotation zone and they feel comfortable with it, even if they're giving up quality shots, they feel comfortable with the contest. And they have a confidence about them. And that defense is going to give them wiggle room on the other end. Boston being able to navigate that consistently, I think, has been a really big key to the series. And it's something that Dallas got to be worried about. Because if I had handed you Nekias, hey, Jayson Tatum's going to go 6 for 22, and the Celtics are shooting 25.6% from 3. Probably like Dallas's odds, right?
It's probably, 1-1 going back to Dallas.
And Boston found a way to win. Okay, what was the Dallas question?
Well, funny enough, like you answered it within that. I was going to tee it up for you. Like, what did you see differently from Dallas defensively in this one? Or what did you see different from Dallas in general from game 1 to game 2?
Well, I mean, to add to that, they had a stronger mindset to defend past the first rotation. I thought the secondary efforts, the third efforts were good. I think you had those type of plays where maybe the switch wasn't the best, but they fought to recover. Maybe they got beat on help, but someone came to rotate. They get beat on a drive. Someone's there to rotate on that drive. Those are the kind of efforts that Dallas had to make. And it just felt a lot more decisive is probably the word I would use. Whereas in game 1, it felt a little more scrambly. They were scrambling a little bit more. They were trying to figure out, okay, is Kyrie stepping up from the dunker spot? Are we helping off from the corner? Which pass are we giving up? In this contest, you could at least see the vision of what they were trying to do and what they were willing to give up. I think that's a positive step. And that allows you to battle more during these stretches. So I thought that was probably the biggest key.
Okay, I got you. And just bouncing off that point, again, Boston with a season high, or postseason high rather, in drives in this one. Dallas defended 48 closeout attacks in game 1, defended 54 in game 2, so technically more. But to your point, the rotations did feel a little bit cleaner from them. And so like having that level of, we know what we want to do, a little bit more urgency, a little more attention to detail, something that I pointed out during the Dunker Spot watch party, when Jayson Tatum was getting the Derek Lively switch. Just watching the footwork and some of the shading that we saw from Derek Lively. So, okay, we're going to force you left. Or whichever side has 2 defenders or 2 players on it already. I'm shading you to that side. If you're going to beat me on the drive, you're beating me to this side. And so if we want to get a dig in there, or if we want to pass this off some kind of way, I at least have a little bit extra relief. So it did feel like Dallas was a little bit more diligent in providing some help from their bigs after they were largely in an island in that game 1, particularly with some of the early offense, early transition stuff. Tatum and Jaylen Brown were really able to get downhill with the quickness and put some strain on Dallas in that regard. So that portion was interesting. To the Dallas offense, I'll pose this one to you open-ended. Obviously, Dallas needs a better version of Kyrie Irving, the scorer, for them to get back in the series as the series shifts to Dallas. I don't think I don't think it takes some rocket science to figure that portion out. But with their offense as a whole, do you subscribe it more to Dallas needing to press the do better button, or are there any specific tweaks that you would like to see them make?
It feels like the do better button. in all honesty. I think the do better button enables a whole lot to make more sense. Hopefully that makes sense. Because I think you saw from the start, okay, hey, you guys are switching. Derek White, you come guard Luka right away. Drew Holiday, let's cycle through some of these matchups and let's get Luka going and see what they're going to do. I think for Dallas, you had the moments where PJ Washington was looking to be aggressive when he was spaced. He was looking to drive the basketball. I think that's a big key. How can PJ Washington self-create? Can you get him some post-ups? Can you get him some different types of offense? Can Kyrie Irving drive and get in the paint? I think just can Dallas find a way to get them in rotation outside of we just made a bunch of shots and now we have to react? Because Boston hasn't really blinked. So Dallas is going to have to find a way to generate some of those on their own. Maybe play a little bit quicker. Maybe move the ball from side to side. But they have to find a way to get Boston's defense to collapse at some point. You know, I think that this is a Kyrie Irving series in that they need his scoring and they're going to need his drives. And hopefully that can be the thing that opens things up. I think one of the concerning things, if you're Dallas, was kind of watching how Boston treated Luka as the game went on. And so in my mind, right, it was clear in game one, Boston, we're okay with switching against Luka and Kyrie. We're going to stay at home. If we have to mix in a drop, we will. We'll switch, late switch, but we're not blinking. Game two, as Luka played well, and he was scoring the ball very well in that first half, you started to see a little bit more of like the funneling effect from the Boston Celtics, a little bit more help. Whether it was when Kristaps Porzingis is in a drop, Derek White guarding someone on the wing. Hey, actually, I'll just plant right here at the elbow, take some pressure off KP, let you recover. Luka gets to isolation. Drew Holiday's guarding Joshua in the corner. Hey, actually, as soon as you get in the paint, I'm also going to be here. Hey, you got Luka gets switched. It's Al Horford. Derek White's planted right there. Like those little things were now, yes, we're going to make it tough on you to score. And no, we don't want to put two on the ball, but we will show help. And we will funnel these shots to X, Y, and Z. And can they make us pay consistently? That was an intriguing development because if it becomes a combination of we feel comfortable switching against you and we also feel comfortable helping if you have it going and not giving you the rotations you want, we're doing it on our own. It's not a new question for Dallas. It's one we've asked every series. Can Dallas's guys make them pay? But it has a little bit of a different feel, especially when it doesn't feel like many of them have it going. You know, Derrick Jones Jr., how many cuts and drives have we seen from him in this series? And he's been really good all playoffs long. But Boston's fine with him spaced. Maxi Kleber, fine with him spaced. Green, fine with him spaced. So
Jaden Hardy,
please dribble. So that's kind of been, that's the scenario. That's where Dallas kind of has to find a way to put things back on the menu for Boston to think about.
And again, just circling back, like that's what's kind of made the Boston defense thing fun. Because again, it was like largely just 1v1 or 2v2 in game one. And in this one, okay, we can show a little bit more help because one, we want to throw a different look at you. We want to make you more uncomfortable. But also we're helping in a way in which if you do try to counter it, it's in a way that we have baked into our system. Oh, we didn't give up corner threes really in game one. You can have this one because it's Josh Green. And that kind of thing. And being able to mix that stuff in, and like to your point about, you know, the aggressive nail help from Derek White, I think there was just more nail help in general for Boston. They were able to kind of ramp that up based on who Dallas had out there, which very quickly, I have like the third quarter in my head. It was like a 2 or 4 point game midway through the third. And Dallas eventually flowed into like Luka plus bench and then Kyrie plus bench. But having traditional center, it was Derek Lively in this case, Josh Green and Jaden Hardy on the floor at the same time. It just gave Boston a level of freedom defensively that I'm not sure Dallas can afford to give. Or at the very least, while they're largely not making shots from the perimeter right now. Because when they have Kristaps in, or when they go double big with Kristaps and Al, we can just have one guy roaming and another guy, if we want to provide some help. So even if you try to move the spacing around, let's put you in the strong side corner, let's have you high on the floor. We can still get away with roaming because of who some of these guys are. And I think there was a stretch. Midway through the third, you get some free throws from the Mavericks. Holy crap, it's a 2 point game. Boston reels off a 10-0 run in 2 minutes where Dallas couldn't get anything. And this was also some of the pockets where you saw Dallas, actually, we can put 2 on the ball right here. We can afford to get the ball out of your hands because ultimately the guys behind you are guys that we don't mind taking shots. And so like having the wherewithal to know when to ramp things up, because this has still largely been a dropper switch series for Boston. Like the blitz rate was technically higher, but again, they were very selective about when we wanted to go to that. And so like I've just appreciated the attention to detail that Boston's been able to show there. And to your point about Dallas, like they have to find a way to take some of this off the table. Like a lot of it, I think, is going to be just we have to make shots so they think about this stuff. But as far as, I don't know, like scheme adjustments or play adjustments, like I brought it up on the old man, the 3 things, like when they're going to empty side pick and roll in particular, what exactly are we getting to on the weak side to try to remove the big so we can make these drives more fruitful if they're just going to switch the pick and roll? Or something that you brought up after game 1, do we see Dallas truly tap into the double drag bag? Because through 2 games, we still haven't really seen that. The closest we've gotten to it is there were a couple of possessions with Kyrie Irving in the game 2. And then just overall, conceptually, it's Luka gets high pick and roll here, 3 seconds later, here comes the guy I really want the screen. And so it's more staggered than like your traditional double drag. I do wonder, like, do we see them actually just tap into like legit double drag in game 3? Because through 2 games, we largely haven't seen it. And that can be a way to at least poke at matchups in a different way if Boston's going to switch. Or if Boston is in the mood to ramp up the coverage or whatever, can we make this guy the first screener to ensue that this second guy's going to do something that gets Sue on the ball? And we can finally get Boston in rotation a little bit. I dropped the closeout stat on the old man, the 3 things. I think it's 54 closeout attacks defended for Dallas. Boston's had 50 through 2 games. It was 25 in each. Like just the disparity there just speaks to how Boston has been able to, again, schematically just kind of keep Dallas within their own box. You take these shots, you get this coverage when you put this guy in action. We're helping from here. So if you do get this corner 3 or something more fruitful, it's from a guy that we don't care about. And Dallas has to work to make Boston a little bit uncomfortable. It's not impossible for them, especially if, to the do better button portion, if Kyrie is able to make some shots, that should loosen things up by default. But I am curious to see what it's going to look like moving forward.
I think the pressure points are the pressure points. And I think you mentioned some of the empty side things they could do. I thought it was interesting. I think there was one play in the back of my mind where they went empty side and they had a stagger on the weak side, only Boston just didn't move. Because they were just in their shell. And like, I mean, that's cool, but we're totally going to be fine over here. I thought it was interesting to watch them bounce some of the Luka post-ups in the second half. And hey, Daniel Gafford, go ahead and attack Jayson Tatum real quick. Like, can they just find enough of those little quirky baskets to sustain? Because I think game 2 was more of a battleground for Dallas in that sense, to where it's not all the way in the mud, but it's mud adjacent. Yeah. And Boston came with bursts, but that had that half court feel for Dallas that they want. And I still think the formula exists for Dallas to where, hey, and it sounds insane analysis wise, but it's like, hey, if the game is close in the fourth quarter, whether we're up or we're within striking distance, what we do feels more impactful. Do you feel as comfortable with the pure one-on-one? Do you feel as comfortable with that switch if they have it cooking? Are you going to put 2 on the ball, and what does that open up? And now can we just make timely baskets to take this home? Mm-hmm. It's just, can Dallas sustain the offense over the course of the game? That's been the interesting part, because they have had some really good bursts, and they have had 2, 3, 4 minutes where the ball has not gone in the basket. And that's where it's okay. Can Derrick Jones Jr. get a drive or a cut? Can PJ get a drive or a cut? Like, they need those timely baskets from those guys to build out the attack overall. And now it's a wave as opposed to Luka and Kyrie.
Mm-hmm. And to that point, you already mentioned PJ Washington. Like, so many of these closeout attacks are just attacks from the wing, as he's either the initial screener and he kind of pops out, or if he's just space one pass away. Like, him able to get those complimentary buckets against a Derek White. And in general, like, this is a question that I posed heading into the series. Like, was Derek White going to become somewhat of a main character for Dallas to poke at? Not because he's not good, all defense caliber talent. was very good this year, but more so in terms of the level of comfort that Luka may have, and even Kyrie, and I want to dig into that a little bit later. Like with Luka in particular, I am just bigger than you, and I can just lead the dance against you. And so it was interesting to see Dallas, at least from my eye, attempt to put Derek White a little bit more action in the game 2 compared to the game 1. I do wonder, as you brought up the post-up point, is that something that they lean even more into in game 3 moving forward? That gets interesting. With Kyrie, I have like your voice ringing in my ears as you've talked a lot this year about Luka just cycling through matchups sometimes just to prove you can't guard me, you can't guard me, you can't guard me, you can't guard me either. Y'all gonna have to put 2 on me or y'all are not gonna have a good time. It does not, well, to be frank about it, Kyrie has not had that element going for him through the first 2 games of the series. Again, even looking at the game 1, there were just a couple of possessions. Here's a high pick and roll. You get dropped. Here's a wide open pull up. You miss. Like, that's just basketball sometimes, and that stinks for Dallas. But like, those are shots that you just kind of bank in on Kyrie being able to self-correct and just make shots as the series shifts to Dallas. Looking at the game 2 and seeing Drew in the jersey, then Derek White in the jersey, then Jaylen Brown in the jersey, and Kyrie not looking super comfortable against those guys, that raised my brow a bit. Now, as you mentioned on the Old Man to 3 things, like there were, particularly earlier in the game, Kyrie was able to get some of the drives going. And it felt like he was just going to establish that, but it felt like that weighted off as the game went on. I do wonder what Dallas can do, if anything, to kind of free Kyrie up a little bit more than he has been. Because it does feel kind of like, outside of the transition stuff, it really feels like it's a drag to get Kyrie the ball in a spot where he can just attack immediately. It just feels like so many of these are catch, survey, let me try to go. Or when I do try to go, they're already kind of loaded up. Like they seem a little bit more willing to throw some extra help on me versus Luka. Again, some of this is just Kyrie makes some of the open shots that he gets. But like he hasn't felt super free through 2. And so I'm curious to see what Dallas is able to do to kind of work him open and give him some easier attacks in the half court.
Well, I think this is the tough part, and this is where it speaks to Boston's defensive personnel, because a lot of the times we're talking about PJ, Derrick Jones, Kyrie opening things up, and then you recognize who's defending them. And it's like, okay, Kyrie Irving, maybe let's set some high pick and roll for Kyrie, right? And whoever's guarding, or whoever Horford or Porzingis is guarding, let's try and give him a screen so Kyrie can get downhill. And then realize, oh yeah, that's Drew Holiday guarding Kyrie Irving. He's pretty good at navigating screens. In my mind, hey, maybe let's mix in some pin downs for Kyrie Irving. Let's whoever's guarding the big, go get Kyrie in the corner. And then again, you realize that's Drew Holiday guarding Kyrie Irving at times. He can navigate. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky. I just think for Kyrie, and I've heard it all day, because once I saw the Celtics feel comfortable switching Porzingis onto Kyrie, I was intrigued, because that's something that teams hadn't necessarily been willing to do. Like, here's this drop, and you cook it, we might come higher, but we're not going to give you the switch. He's going to have to be able to make the bigs pay. He's going to have to be able to get into a zone where he's starting to cycle through things and get more comfortable. And however he measures that, whether it's establishing the drive and now I'm cooking, or just knocking down some of the shots that we've seen him make, that's going to have to be the balance. Because it felt like Boston has said, hey, you know what, Kyrie, actually, you're the person whose water we can make the faucet a little leaky. We just make it a little bit of a drip. You're not even noticing it until that water bill comes.
You know what? That's pretty darn good. As I pulled it up, it kind of circles back to the earlier point I made about some of the lineup combinations and it allowing Boston to load up. Like on that possession, that was when Kyrie gets one of those double pick and rolls. Kristaps switches, and the strong side is PJ, and Jayson Tatum's kind of peeled in. Jaden Hardy's one pass away, and Jaylen Brown's just sitting at the nail. And it's just like, okay, even if you feel like Kyrie can cook Kristaps, and he ends up generating some pretty decent separation on a step back 3 that he misses, it's like, okay, if he wants to drive, where exactly is he going? Like, you're either driving left right into Jaylen Brown, and again, Boston is saying, hey, look, Jaden Hardy, he's right there. You might want to pass to him. There's 2 on the ball. There he is. If he drives to his strong hand, You got Kristaps on your left, kind of bearing on you. You may have the chase down block element there. Also, here's Jayson Tatum, who is early on showing a little bit of help off the strong side corner. We've talked a lot about, throughout the history of this podcast, like a team like Miami is very willing to throw strong side help. Or strong, they'll just do that depending on who's there. Or even if they're not there, we are facing a S-tier star. We're just showing help and making the other guys beat us. Boston can tap into that bag too. And so you get into some of these lineups, it's like, well, this is, throughout the postseason, throughout the regular season, like the Kyrie on Luka off minutes have generally been pretty good this year. Against Boston, you got really good perimeter defenders out there, even when they tap into the bench. They're going to have one of Drew or Derek White on the floor. And again, in this example, you had Tatum on the floor, like the only sub, technically Kristaps, we know he's a starter, and they had Sam Hauser out there. But your other three were the Jays and Drew Holiday. And it's like, okay, what is Kyrie poking at exactly? He technically has a matchup he wants, but he doesn't have the same room to do that. And then just very quickly to the Hardy Green point. Through 2 games, 13 minutes with Jaden Hardy and Josh Green on the floor together. The Mavs have lost those minutes by 9 points. Those are the margins that you can't afford. Like in the game 1, again, the game just kind of got out of hand. But like in a game like game 2, where it was close in that third quarter and then 10-0 run for Boston. In the fourth quarter, it was close until explosion to close things out. You have to be able to find some wins. And I think I want to say it was Matt Moore on the timeline this morning that kind of spoke to Dallas has to find some pockets to where they can just win some minutes, which is like duh analysis. You want to outscore the other team. But like, if you feel like Boston just has a better starting group, then you have to win late first quarter, early second quarter, or mid third quarter or something to give you a chance to, as you pointed to, let's get this game close in the fourth. Now we can have Luka and Kyrie versus the Jays, and we have a chance to win this thing. The fact that they haven't been able to find these kind of pockets so far in the series, and this is something that we talked about in the preview, it's another reason why Boston is in a really good position right now. Again, not impossible for Dallas, but this is kind of where it's at right now.
Well, I think that point is why the Kristaps Porzingis minutes have been so impactful for Boston and the timing of his minutes. Whether they bring him in a little bit earlier or they bring him in a little bit later, he's facing kind of that group, that Luka plus a big plus wing 1, wing 2. Is it Green? Is it Hardy? Is it Exum? Whoever it is. Mm-hmm. That allows Porzingis to be able to have a little bit more of that rim protection element because he's eventually going to be guarding someone, whether it's Kleber or Green. That's fine, whatever you do out there. I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. Dallas obviously has to flip that script. But now, once you get some of those drives, Porzingis has been money at protecting the rim in those moments. It felt very timely. So now those minutes where you're able to find a rhythm or you're able to poke at some of the second unit, it's a question that we had. You don't have that same luxury because even if you get the matchup, maybe you score. But now, hey, maybe we're not switching Peyton Pritchard on. And maybe now we're just trying to funnel the drive, or now you have to score this way. It puts pressure on you, and it makes it even tougher because those were quality minutes, felt like, for Kyrie. So now, Kyrie's in rhythm. Now he's cooking against this group. But again, if we're comfortable with a switch or a drop, and Sam Hauser's holding up, and we're still showing help, you still have to figure that part of it out. So that's where my mind goes to. You have to make subs, but what's your pattern going to be to kind of dominate or win those minutes and give yourself the best chance?
Mm-hmm. And I just think, just kind of broadly, and again, dipping into the analysis bag right here, like I do think Dallas was just expecting more from all 3 of their bigs heading into the series. And again, Daniel Gafford and even Derek Lively in pockets, again, more attention to detail stuff for Lively defensively. Like they felt better in the game too. But the fact that none of the 3 have like really popped in a major degree feels problematic because that kind of limits what kind of versatility Dallas can really tap into on both ends. We talked about game 1, like the containment from Lively and Gafford when they switched them out, it just wasn't there. Maxi Kleber wasn't able to contain drives like that in game 1 either. And as you've noted, when he's spaced, they're going to dare him to shoot. Now, we have seen many playoff games, go back to the Western Conference Finals run a couple of years ago, to where, okay, we're leaving Maxi, that sound process, etc. Maxi hits 5 threes. Oh no. Maxi hasn't had one of those games yet. And so if you're not getting the shooting from him and Kristaps can just roam around the basket, or you just have more, again, just in general, just have more leeway to help on drives when you're trying to get downhill, And if Maxi's getting roasted on the other end, where exactly do you go with those minutes? Because Lively and Gafford just aren't giving you the potential for floor spacing. Like, I do think it felt like in game 2, they did try to move Lively around a little bit more. It wasn't just, I'm not involved, so I'm at the dunker spot. Like, there were some stray possessions where he's just in the strong side corner as Luka or Kyrie's trying to pick at a different guard or a different wing to go at in isolation. So, like, at least the attempt was being made for Dallas. But it kind of goes back to our overall thing, or at least my overall thing. Boston is just dictating so much. And Dallas ultimately has to find a way to say, okay, we're doing this. What are you going to do about it? They have to be able to get to that realm at some point. And they largely haven't through the first 2 games.
Yeah. That's the toughest part of this series. That's where you give a hat tip to Boston for staying convicted in what they do. And it's on Dallas to just compete and try and fight hard. Here's where my mind goes to. And this is where I'd be a little concerned if I'm a Dallas fan, right?
Okay.
Boston has variance, man. And they won the game where they didn't make all the threes. Are you just going to get hit with a 3-point wave that is just going to be very difficult? You got Drew Holiday putting up a Shaq, Wilt, Kareem-esque stat line. Like 26, 11 of 14 from the field. Like, that's not usually how that's supposed to work for guards. What do you do if you get the Al Horford game? What if you get the truly Derek White game? What if Jayson Tatum actually makes shots and he's got a blend of, hey,
I was about to say, if we get the Jayson Tatum game.
Hey, I'm cooking with these shots that y'all don't love that I take. And I am also still committed to making these drives. Also, salute Jayson Tatum for that quote, for him being like, now, why would I let my ego get in the way of this here championship, bucko? Like, that's where it gets tough.
I haven't won one of these. What do you mean?
Like, that's where it gets tough for Dallas because they have things they're trying to solve. We're talking through them. We're trying to figure them out. If the equation changes in this scenario, it's a sprint. And you know Boston's locked in. The closer they get to it, the more locked in they are. So that's why, pivotal game 3 is a pivotal game 3 for the Mavericks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I made the observation / the joke during our Dunker Spot watch party during the game, which go ahead and hop in those, friends. We're having fun, live breakdowns, etc. But I was like, it's funny as we tap very quickly into like the narrative bag and like whose team is it, all this good stuff. It's just going to be very funny if this turns into Jayson Tatum All-NBA, Jaylen Brown Eastern Conference Finals MVP, Drew Holiday Finals MVP. Like, it would just be very emblematic of this Celtics team to where we're having all these arguments, not we, because we just talk about the hoop, but like in general, it'd be funny to have all these conversations and it's just, well, actually everyone won, you see. Again, Kristaps game / Jaylen Brown game in game 1. We got the Drew game in game 2. Would anybody be shocked if Jayson Tatum just drops 32, 8, and 6 in game 3? I wouldn't. Again, like the funny part of this, as Tatum is driven to the basket a lot, he's gotten to the sidestep and large level fault. Like, these are things that generally are pretty efficient for him. Like, the pull-up 3 has been a conversation for a while with him. He runs very hot or very cold with some of these. Like, matter of fact, we were, doing the pods during the regular season. You was the one that brought the stat that, like, since January, Jayson Tatum is just lighting the nets on fire on pull-up 3s. So, like, we know that Tatum could do this, which also circles into why Dallas, there's an argument to defend him differently. Hey, if we are able to contain drives better, how about we just see if you can actually draw skillful fouls against Derrick Jones Jr. or PJ Washington? Let's see if you can finish over the top of those guys without collapsing as hard as we have been through the first 2 games. The problem with that, Tatum may just be up for the challenge, first and foremost. And 2, a testament to Boston and the talent that they have, they just move your bigs around so well because Kristaps can shoot from anywhere. Al Horford, especially when he has it going, can shoot from anywhere. We can just place your bigs here. So now if you truly get beat, it's just going to be uncontested for Jayson Tatum. Or if you do have to send an extra layer of help, it's going to be smaller than Jayson Tatum is because of where we're spacing your bigs out, because of where we're spacing our bigs. It's just such a tough dynamic for Dallas. And again, not impossible. A few shots get made. Actually, very quickly, just off the cuff. How'd you feel about the block on PJ Washington late? Did you feel like that was clean or was that a foul?
I thought it was clean.
Okay. And that concludes Rough Talk here. But like, my overall point is like a few shots swinging like this. I don't think we were far off from it being a 1-1 series. Boston did what they needed to do and they got it done. So I don't want to say, hey, it's 2-0, just DVR the rest of the finals is over. I'm not making that argument. I will say, like, Dallas certainly has a challenge ahead of them. Luka certainly seems game, if that first half was any indication. And again, if they're able to make some threes, some above the break threes in particular, if Kyrie's able to get going, none of these are out of the realm of possibility. It can get fun. As the old adage goes, playoff series does not start until the road team wins one. So, like, as good as we feel about Boston right now, if Dallas takes care of business, we're 2-2 heading back to Dallas, and we just have a whole lot of fun stuff to talk about moving forward. So, a salute, but it's not over.
I see what tree you're barking up, big dog. I mean, I think for me, that's the fun of breaking down a series and analyzing a series. Is you have to figure out, okay, how does Boston win? How does Dallas win? What does Boston do to counter? And there's a lot of times where we have these 4 or 5 game series in theory where you can see exactly what this team needed to do to win. And they've started to work on doing it. They just didn't win. So Dallas is in a hole. They have some questions they have to answer, but the formula is still there. I think Boston's response every single time that Dallas came close in both of these games has been impressive. Now, is there a world where that doesn't necessarily come easy on the road? We've seen it. We see the slowdown. We see not the drives not hitting as much. Maybe Dallas decides, hey, we'll mix in when we help and when we don't. It's not as automatic. It gets interesting. But again, it is on Dallas to show up and do it. Because we can talk about the defensive improvement. What if the defense slips backwards a little bit again? Now we're talking about a different game. With the shot making still out there, we're talking about a different game. So that's where it gets really fun. And I think, you tip your cap to Boston. You wait to see if Dallas has another big swing in them, and we move. That's the fun of the finals.
Mm-hmm.
I had a blast watching Heat Denver, and I got yelled at.
Same. But like, also, I was a little bit more somber about that one. But actually, to the defense point, that leads to a question I wanted to ask you about. Going back to the Dallas defense really quickly, and going back to Luka, who I think it is fair to acknowledge is not playing at 100% right now. Old adage, it's playoff time, it's finals time, so like probably literally no one's 100%. But very clear Luka isn't all the way himself. Boston put that man in action a lot. And this is after putting him in action quite a bit in game one. Had specific numbers, but that doesn't really matter right now, conceptually thing. Do you think Dallas needs to do anything differently in terms of the Luka coverage? Or more importantly, can they afford to do anything differently with the Luka coverage?
What would different be? Like, do you want him in drop?
I feel like that's something that Dallas has like sprinkled in before, not in the series, but just in general. Like they sprinkled that kind of thing in before. Like, hey, let's just, if you drive deep enough, we just turn this into a late switch. So at least the catch point for Luka is a little bit lower. He has less space to navigate. And if you try to like veer off to the other side, Nash around the basket, go to the other side, Luka can pass a guy off. You can kind of keep Luka low. Like they've done some stuff with Luka this year. And so I guess that's the first thing off the top of my head. I don't know if you want to go show and recover with where like the knee/chest/back/ whatever else is.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't see him hedging, big dog. I ain't gonna hold you.
Yeah.
I mean they've gotten creative with switch. They've shown switch and double. I don't think they're gonna switch and double in this series. I think the issue is just with the wave that Boston has. Where do you put him? Like there's no real easy point to put him on to where it's like, hey, he just won't get screened here. So unless you just want to just go drop and say, hey, take pull-ups, I don't see Dallas going that far. I mean, if you want to go wild card, back of the brain, they would never do this. But what if you just gave Luka the Tatum matchup to start? Just be like, all right, well, now you don't have to screen. I'm here.
I mean, I guess like that paired with, again, being more diligent in game two of making sure Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford's close to the basket. If you could just turn that into like a funnel ordeal, like maybe. I don't think that could just be your base, but like that could be something that they sprinkle in, maybe. Something that we really haven't seen is zone. Like, is that a button that Jason Kidd presses in game 3? But I don't know. Like, that's just something that I'm keeping my eye on because the volume of it, figuratively and literally, is just kind of there. You look at the actual efficiency numbers on that. Like, Boston hasn't technically gotten fruitful offense out of putting Luka in action, but you just see those drives where it's looking a lot like some of the Harden reach arounds after getting beat. It's like you put enough of those on film, like at some point, like the shots and the kick, the shots off the kicks are going to fall with some of those. At least you would think so. So more so curious to see if you had any thought on that. Before we transition from the finals, any other thoughts, questions, some shout outs that you didn't get to? Anything you want to clear from the notes?
This feels like your portion of the program, big dog. What you
Not really. I feel like I've said a lot for the notes. So genuine open-ended thing for me. I feel like we've talked about this pretty much.
I think we've nailed it. I think I'll go back to your earlier point about the Dallas bigs. I think this is what Boston wanted to do. Like, I think the defense is going to be the defense, and that can tighten itself up contain-wise. But hey, pick and roll is going to be a switch. And so, hey, on the off occasion that you get a slip or we decide we need to come higher against Luka, you might get a roll or two. But other than that, you're not getting the same roll. You're not getting the same drop. And the drives haven't hit to where they can get those late, dump offs or lobs. So if they can get the bigs going somehow, we'll see if that opens things up. But Boston's been determined to take that away.
Okay, got you. Like, just Jayson Tatum on a big has been such a fun game within the game to follow throughout this series. So I want to give Tatum the salute there again. Hasn't shot well, but the drives have been important. The defense, the rebounding has also been important. So a salute there. I will say very quickly to the Luka offense portion. Like, I do think it wasn't a full-fledged bend or break for Boston's defense schematically. But it was interesting to see, like, the flurry in the first half from Luka, and then you get the second half, I want to say third quarter, but the second half possession, where it's just high pick and roll with Luka and Derek Lively, and Drew's defending him. And it was screen, duck under, re-screen, we duck under that too, another screen, and then another re-screen, and then you eventually get the Derek Lively dunk. And I was like, hey, the fact that just isn't a switch is interesting. I wonder if that's a straight possession or if that was a quick example of Boston saying, okay, he is kind of hitting us a little bit. It may not be a full-blown shift, but like, okay, let's do something different this time. Because he's starting to look a little bit more comfortable. So like, if that counts as not even a blink, maybe a wink, a wince from Boston, like I'm curious to see if that's what that ended up being or if it's back to the status quo. In game 3, we did actually get a lob from Dallas in the game 2, their first one of the series. So that was neat. Talked about this after game 1, but the full court pressure that Boston showed against Luka Doncic. Some quick counters there from Dallas. Like, hey, PJ, how about you bring the ball up the floor? There was a funny one midway through the first, whereas after a made free throw, it's an inbound to Josh Green. Josh Green gives it to Maxi Cleaver, and Maxi just decides it's Maxi time, and he goes coast to coast on a drive and promptly gets blocked by Kristaps Porzingis. So you don't want the block, but again, just a very loud example of, because I think Derek White had the Josh Green assignment at that point. Just a very quick example of, okay, we know you're trying to do this. We know you're trying to bleed clock, etc. Let's just get it to somebody else so we can flow into our offense. And I made the comparison about the Minnesota-Denver series where they started going, or Denver went to that to counter what Minnesota was doing. So nice to see just that from Dallas. As far as anything else, I don't think I have anything major from the note portion. Kyrie underperformed the expected shot quality again. So Dallas now 1-4 in those games this postseason. Other than that, salute to Boston. Dallas has a pathway. There are some adjustments that we'd like to see or could see to kind of loosen things up on both ends, but they got to get out there and do it. So I think that'll do it for me. We can now move very quickly to the news portion. Not a ton on the NBA side, but came through the pipeline earlier today as we record on a Monday afternoon. Darvin Ham joining Doc Rivers' staff as the top assistant in Milwaukee. Do you have any early thoughts on that one?
I mean, he's back to Milwaukee, so it's strengthening staff. Good to see him right back on there. So salute to Darvin Ham, salute to the Milwaukee Bucks coaching staff. Also, Nekias.
What's up?
Very quickly, per Woj, breaking news: Connecticut's Dan Hurley has turned down the Los Angeles Lakers' 6-year, $70 million offer and will return to chase a third straight national title. There you go, Husky Man. There you go, Husky Man. That's it. Keep it moving.
Yeah, that's follow me on Twitter at Nekias NBA. Anyway, that's your NBA news. We can now shift to the W side, close things out. On the news front, the Team USA Olympic roster was announced. Your guards, Chelsea Gray of the Aces, Sabrina Ionescu of the Liberty, Jewel Lloyd of the Storm, Kelsey Plum of the Aces, Diana Taurasi of the Mercury. Your wings/forwards, Nafisa Collier of the Lynx, Kalia Copper of the Mercury, Brianna Stewart of the Liberty, Alyssa Thomas of the Sun, Jackie Young of the Aces, and your bigs, Brittany Griner of the Mercury, Asia Wilson of the Aces. That is your 12, barring, again, like injury or anything like that may come up. Chelsea Gray hasn't played a game yet. There was a report over the weekend of Callie Lawson-Freeman of the Las Vegas Review-Journal that the Aces do expect Chelsea Gray back before the Olympic break. So I'd imagine we see at least a few regular season games before we get into all of the fun stuff. So if she is healthy, I don't think you have anything to worry about Chelsea being there, but it's worth keeping an eye on that roster spot to begin with. Of the 12 players listed, only 4 players on the team, Kalia Copper, Sabrina Ionescu, Kelsey Plum, and Alyssa Thomas, don't have Olympic experience, but all 4 were on the 2022 World Cup roster. So everyone on the roster has some level of Team USA experience. Your notable absences in alphabetical order, Ariel Atkins, who was on the World Cup roster and was at the most recent Team USA training camp before announcing the roster in Cleveland back in April. Shakira Austin also falls under that category. Aaliyah Boston was at Team USA camp. Caitlin Clark did not make the roster. Was part of like the players that were listed to come to camp, couldn't get there. She was in the middle of a title run or potential title run, so naturally could not go to the training camp. Alicia Gray was at the Brooklyn camp earlier in the year, not the Cleveland camp in April. Ryan Howard, who was selected to the 3v3 Olympic team, but was also in the Brooklyn camp. Bree Jones of the Sun. For your center depth, she was on the World Cup roster. Benijah Laney Hamilton, also on the World Cup roster. Arike Agumbawale has done some Team USA things dating back to 2019, I believe is the year. So those are your absences. Any general thoughts on the team itself?
It's going to be fun to watch. I mean, you look at the program that Team USA has consistently had over the course of the years, and there's a team returning, I think, 7 from the last Olympic team and returning 8 from the World Cup team. So you can see kind of the continuity they've built. I believe every single one of them have made an all-W team except for the one who won WNBA Finals MVP. Shout out Kalia Copper. So a very decorated roster, full of very talented players. It's gonna be fun to watch them play together. Like I want to see Stewie and Asia defend. That's always fun to me. Like I want to see Alyssa Thomas drive at everyone. Known to like I want to see Diana Taurasi chase and get another ring and give us more hijinks post victory. It'll be fun.
Yeah, and like watching Alyssa Thomas in international play, where even more physicality is allowed, is such a funny experience, like funny complimentary. It's such a funny experience. Because like you watch The Sun, and you should watch The Sun to be clear, but you watch The Sun and you just see some of the post-ups from AT and some of the drives from AT and some of the, oh, you're driving against me. Actually, give me the basketball, please. Just a very aggressive rip animation. And then you watch her overseas and she's just putting shoulder with the asterisk into chest of defender. And it is just a very funny bit. I'm excited to watch AT. I would imagine they're going to continue to experiment with AT at the 5 and get into some of those lineups. That gets cool. You mentioned the Kalia Copper note. No all W selection yet. At this current pace, she's probably going to make her first one this year with the way that she's played. And even with that, like she's been an all-star. You mentioned she's a finals MVP already. So it's not like she's not accomplished. And she has the Team USA experience already. So that makes sense there. Let's just like very quickly on the Caitlin Clark front. Not a surprise that she didn't make it to me. I don't think there are any shenanigans involved. Like she literally could not make it to any of the camps because of like this past college season and even dating back to, I think it was Rebecca Lobo, who has a strong handle on this, that mentioned earlier today that like the selection for the Olympic teams are generally like 3-year processes. And they have many of camps and, you know, other competitions mixed into that. And if Caitlin just quite literally couldn't get to any of them, she's going to be lower on the totem pole in terms of the players that could be selected who are building chemistry and or are just actually on these teams moving forward. So if I had to guess, if she's healthy and she is as good as we think she's going to become, Like she's just going to be on the Olympic roster in 2028, and it's not that big of a deal. If I'm not mistaken, I think Breanna Stewart was the last like college player to make a Team USA Olympic roster, which kind of speaks to the threshold that you even have to cross on that front. As Stewie exited college as one of, if not the most decorated college women's basketball player ever. So I don't have any real qualms about that one. Like we could get into like roster spot stuff like outside of the Caitlin conversation. Again, if Chelsea isn't healthy, like that spot's going to open. Brittany Griner just made her season debut as she was dealing with a foot injury. So if she's not able to remain healthy, that could be another spot that opens up. And then again, we just have games until the Olympic break. So anything could happen. Knocking on wood, hopefully nothing does, but just in general. And even if that happens and we have like a spot or two open up because of health, I would imagine with, again, Ariel Atkins has Team USA experience. Shakira Austin has it. Leah Boston has it. Alicia Gray has it. Bree Jones has it. Benigja Laney Hamilton has it. Like those players may get the first crack at it anyway. So I think 2028 is the year that you're going to be looking for. Or 26 if we're getting into like World Cup stuff. So that's all I have on that front. Any W musings, any team or player that's popped for you?
Well, there's a lot to talk about. Real quick, I know we're not quite in it yet, but W news. Do you know if anyone's like clinching any spots in the Commissioner's Cup, Nekias?
I do. It would appear that the New York Liberty have both have clinched a spot, and I believe they have clinched like being able to host the thing. But I'll have to fact check that one. But they are indeed in it. The Liberty looking to go back to back on this thing. Get some more dunnies, get some more money, some more bragging rights, etc. So congrats to the Liberty. Fun weekend for them, honestly.
Well, got wins at Connecticut. Survived the Mystics games, and boy, I mean survived the Mystics games. Shout out to Aaliyah Edwards and Jade Melbourne and Julie Van Loos passing. But really, the Liberty found a way. I think that was a really important stretch for them to go to Connecticut, to have that battle against the Sun, who just, hey, New York, all that movement you guys like to run, it's really nice. How about you just come hang out in the mud with us for a little bit? About 20, 30 minutes, no worries. It feels like every time they play, the Liberty go out to a lead, and then that lead just slowly evaporates over the course of 15 minutes. But Jonquel Jones, with a reminder of her talent over this back-to-back, 25.5 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks, 20 of 29 from the field, 7 of 12 from 3.
Yeah.
When she's playing at that high of a level, that Liberty team's different. Sabrina Ionescu's drives, kind of hitting the little hesitation, hop, skip, drive. She's getting in that paint. And so Benigja Laney Hamilton, very good defensively. But you find the Liberty in a little bit more of a rhythm. They're still working things out rotation-wise, but the defense is hitting the activity. The offense is starting to flow through options. You can see the comfort. So I just want to give a quick hat tip to the New York Liberty.
Okay. And then just very quickly on the Liberty front, as we continue to grow the sample out with some of the Sabrina plus big wings lineups, with her just kind of as the nominal point guard, a plus 10.7 net rating in those minutes with Sabrina on without Courtney Vandersloot, plus 48 in 242 minutes overall. The most used alignment with that group is Sabrina Ionescu, Benigja Laney Hamilton, Kayla Thornton, Breanna Stewart, and Jonquel Jones. That lineup is huge. A plus 42 in 95 minutes. Teams have not figured out how to deal with that. If Sabrina is the only player that you can quote unquote pick on, and I feel like she has made strides defensively this year, even if you beat her off the drive, you are dealing with the active hands of Kayla Thornton or Benigja Laney Hamilton or Stewie and or Jonquel Jones at the rim. You're not having a good time. And because of just the general cutting, multiple screening partners on the other end, we know Sabrina can bomb away. You just talked about how good the drives have gotten. Benigja, if you put a smaller player on her, that player is going underneath the basket. Jonquel can put just about anyone underneath the basket. Breanna Stewart looking more comfortable as a scorer, which is a terrifying sentence considering how elite of a scorer she's been throughout her entire basketball life. The Liberty are looking pretty darn good. You could just see that when you watch them play, but handing Connecticut their first loss of the season would also just be a feather in the cap there. So salute to the New York Liberty indeed. Did you have any other shouts or thoughts or questions on the W?
Well, I'm trying to figure out what exactly the Western Conference is. Like, I know eventually the top 8 are going to make it, but just in my head, trying to figure it out. Like, the Aces are the Aces, and we know the Aces are the Aces, but then the Aces lost to the Storm. who are rising. And while we talked about in the last pod, good matchup potentially. The defense is rising. Yep. You have to deal with Nekias and Ezi Magbagor and also deal with them on the other end. The offense is inverted. We can run a whole bunch of different things. It's kind of building up. And then the Storm lost to the Lynx, who just aren't going to go away. Going to compete all year long. Kayla McBride shooting the curse word out of the ball.
Let me pull up the exact numbers here, unless you have them.
I don't have them.
But yeah,
go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, just eyeballing it, it has been ridiculous what she's been able to put together. And like, she's been a really good shooter for a long time. Hashtag Aces legend, etc. But no, Steve, over her last 2 games, Kayla McBride is 15 of 23 from 3.
Jeez.
That's not normal. Last 4 games, 25, 13, 25, 32.
Cooking.
And in the 13-point game, they beat the Sparks by 24. So, like, it didn't even matter that she didn't make shots.
Cooking. And then you mix in their ability to use their bigs, and then Bridget Carlton also shooting threes. Like, it's fun to watch the Lynx play, especially when the offense is going there tough. But then you also have the Phoenix Mercury, who are just on the way, by the way. But, I've had a fun time with the Phoenix Mercury. I've had my questions about the spacing and what's the offensive context. And then Brittany Griner returns. And, hey, this makes a little more sense.
Well, y'all can do all that fun stuff and then just dump it down when you need to, huh? That's
neat. All this space. Brittany Griner runs to the basket, seal. Oh, no, we need the help. Touch pass. What do you do?
2 games on the year for Brittany Griner so far against the Lynx. 11 points and 4 boards in 21 minutes. And then in what became a ridiculous basketball game against the Dallas Wings, 24, 9, and 5 with a couple of blocks, only 1 turnover. 11 to 15 inside the arc. Best of luck dealing with all the moving pieces that the Phoenix Mercury have.
So that's most of my musings. Oh, another my underrated subplot of the season has been Tina Charles going at every single rookie big possible, and then dapping them up afterwards.
I appreciate, like, on the NBA side, like, shout out to our mutual pal Cooper Moorhead, brings up the lesson with Bam Adebayo. Like, hey, if you are a guard and you see Bam and you just think, oh, that's a center, that is not a mismatch. You're not going to have fun trying to attack that dude in space. Tina Charles just handing out lessons to the rookies. Y'all good already, and you're going to be great. However, he ain't about to have fun in this office. Let me tell you. Tina just sprinkling. Yeah. Tina mess him up. She sees a rookie. She is going to do her stuff. But yeah, it's been it's been a lot of fun. Just I will move you. And then also when you think I'm about to move you, here's this like high slingshot fade that you just can't contest even if you want to. And because she has the feathery touch still, it's tough sledding. I don't feel any less confused about the Atlanta Dream as a concept, but I appreciate the Tina Charles highlight there.
Oh, just over here real quick. Salute to the Angel Reese, Camila Cardoso combo. There's some fun. The
big passings and popping.
Some fun high-low action. I think it's a good opportunity for them to grow. It's interesting to watch Angel Reese's patience develop in the post. I'll put it that way. I think the footwork and getting through contact, mixing in some drives, mixing in some jumpers, took a 3. I was like, hey, okay. And then you can't teach that kind of height. You can't teach that kind of rim running from Cardoso. So, I mean, things are fun. Oh, yeah. Real quick, the Fever. Hey.
Oh, also, wait, before you get into the Fever, I tried to catch you at the end of the Chicago thing.
You're good.
As you were mentioning the bigs, I forgot to highlight during the news portion, Elizabeth Williams, starting center, would have just been on the first team, just would have made first team all defense at this current pace, out indefinitely with the meniscus injury. So I just wanted to sprinkle it in as you were talking about Chicago. That was it. What'd you have on the Fever front?
I was just going to say that it appears they may be moving in the right direction. If you have a first half where you have 16 made field goals and you have 13 assists, I think that's a positive sign. And some of the off-ball stuff for Caitlin Clark has worked. If they can just get the blend together, they're good to go. Did you have anything to say? I think I covered most of what I wanted to say.
No, you got all the things. Like, I think the big thing for me, and I'm sure we'll get into even more W things on Thursday. We'll get into the mailbag, all the good stuff. Dunkerspot@yahoo.com, by the way, if you have NBA or WNBA questions. Prioritizes the W questions as we're in finals coverage right now. But if you have basketball questions, send them in. The big thing for me, just want to talk about the Aces a little bit, as they had that 0-2 stretch and have now fallen to 5-4. Second in offensive rating, but they're nearly 10 points worse offensively than they were last year when they had the highest offensive rating in W history. Seventh in defense, which has been a point of whatever the word that's a tier below contention is for Becky Hammon. It's probably that word. It has been a point of stress for Becky Hammon as the defense has been a little wobbly. Now, naturally, we talked about it during the Olympic segment, but no Chelsea Gray so far this year. She's very important to what the Aces do on both ends of the floor. Had Jackie Young in the loss to the Storm, but there was a shot, I want to say in the fourth quarter, when Jackie was on the bench, and you could just see in her face that she just did not feel good at all. And so finished that game with 3 points, did not travel to LA for the Sparks game, in which the Aces lost that one as well. So Aces missing some bodies, also trying to work Tiffany Hayes in. So like there are things to point at. But it has just been interesting watching the Aces kind of work through this. And then as someone that's just like in the pre and post game stuff, like listen to how they talk about the adversity that they're facing. Like Asia dropped multiple bars in the post game about being glad that if they're going to hit adversity, they're glad that they're hitting it early so they can see who's really in this, who's really committed. Getting those reps in now, so by the time the playoffs roll around, because it's such a different beast, we're already battle tested. We don't have to stress as much. We know who to trust, when to trust, all that good stuff. And so, like, I'm not super worried about the Aces, largely because, you know, in the case of the Sunday game, they are literally missing 2 of their top 4 right now. But it has been interesting to watch how teams have defended them. And for me, I'm trying to parse through how much of it is based on what teams are already trying to establish within themselves. Like you turn the Lynx game, like they are just, Fee is at the nail. Kayla McBride's at the nail. Insert defenders is at the nail no matter what. So that could just very much just be a Lynx thing. But like going back to the Dream game or some of the things that the Sparks were able to do, and a whole lot of the switching that we saw with Seattle is just like, okay, is a template being established against this Aces group as they try to work through this stuff? So that's more so of a thing that I'm trying to keep an eye on. So when they do get the healthy group, is that just going to be another subplot to work through? Or do you get the talent, things loosen up, and they just get back to rolling? So I'm just kind of intrigued by that point. And then just on a more basic note, like through these 2 games, Asia averaging 30 and 10 and nearly 5 blocks over this 2-game stretch. He went 2 of 3 from 3 over the weekend. They're just drawing stuff up for her, which is fun/terrifying, depending on which side of the aisle you land on. Kelsey Plum, 21 points, 4 assists over the past 2 games, 37 drives over the last 2 games, which is the highest over the weekend. She is leading the W in drives per game at 15.4. Steve, there are 3 other players averaging at least 10 drives per game. Can you name them?
I'm going to try. How many guesses do I get?
We'll give you 5 guesses.
5? Alyssa Thomas?
No.
Darn. We're off to a bad start. Sabrina Ionescu?
No.
Okay. I'm about to tap out. Can I get a hint?
One of these players recently beat the Aces.
Oh, nah. I give up. De'Erica Hamby.
No. It feels like it. I tell you what. The 3 other players, Jackie Young is second at 12.9. Skylar Diggins-Smith is who you're looking for. Also, I guess someone who would also count, Natasha Cloud. Also averaging 10. So those are your 4 averaging 10 drives per game right now.
That tracks. I'm disappointed in myself.
No, it's all right. It's all right. The drives have long been important, like even dating back to, honestly, the first title run. Becky Hammon and Kelsey Plum talked a lot about how important the rim reads are for their offense. Kelsey's certainly been trying to get downhill and poke at things. And so some of the help that she's seeing and some of the late switches she's seeing has been interesting to watch formulate. And again, I'm just trying to parse through how much of this is because of some of the pieces they're missing and teams feel more freedom to try some of this stuff versus if we're going to beat the Aces, we have to do these things and kind of trying to copy a blueprint.
I don't think there's a blueprint out on the Aces. One, because their full lineup is not out there and there's no real blueprint to defend their full lineup. You just have to hope you have enough of the personnel and the mixture of schemes to try and bother. I think it's more so trying to navigate this stretch and figuring out what to run and what to flow into.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it could be as simple for me. It's like, if the defense gets back to a different level, what's the conversation like? Like, yeah. I think that's the one thing that popped to me in the Dallas Wings game, their last win, where they set the tone defensively. It's just about sustaining that. Can they sustain that level of activity? Can they get back to making it tough on you on that end? And what does that do to open things up? I mean, because they started out that Sparks game on an 8-0 run. So, I mean, it's not like it's not there. And there's nothing, I don't think there's much that the Aces haven't seen as far as coverages go or schemes go. It's just, right now is the time to get them. If you're going to get them, you better get them right now. Mm-hmm. Because I am sure this is a team that does not need much motivation.
They do not.
And they will find it. So I think it's just about, if they can get their defense back in order and if they can just increase the flow a little bit, things will be all right. But it just feels like, okay, how much movement are we doing? Do we have to lean in it? Like, how much pick and roll does Kelsey have to run? Like, we saw how good they were when Jackie was there. Like, I think they'll be fine.
They should be good. Word to Kelsey Plum, who said after the Atlanta loss, it's news when they lose. Just getting to some rhyming there. So shout out there. But yeah, it's super interesting to see where the Aces are right now. Again, missing bodies. So I'm not pressing the big red button, nor should any of you. But this upcoming schedule, at home against the Lynx, part 2 on that matchup. They won the first one. The Mercury on the road, who they are 1-1 against. They get the Liberty at home on Saturday. They get the Storm at home. And then they get the Sun at home. It's a lot of home games, but Lynx, Mercury, Liberty, Storm, Sun in rapid succession is not fun when you are trying to work out some stuff.
So basically the top 4 teams in the WNBA and the team that's 4-1 at home.
Yeah. So to Steve's point, if you're going to get them right now. Like, this is the pocket of the schedule. Then after that, on the road against Chicago, on the road against the Mystics, back home against the Fever again. And you get the Mystics, the Sparks, and then the Wings, who are just dealing with all the injury things right now. So the schedule does soften up late June heading into July and ultimately heading into like the Olympic break. But it's an interesting 5-game stretch heading for the Las Vegas Aces. So wanted to get those bars out. So I had there. Any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Watch basketball, enjoy basketball. That's about all I got. So thank you for listening to and or watching this episode of The Dunker Spot. If you haven't already, please subscribe to us. We are on Apple, Spotify, RIP Google, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. We are here on this very YouTube channel, the JJ Reddit YouTube channel, every Tuesday. That is the day after Monday, the day before Wednesday. We're here every Tuesday. So if you like the visual element, we're getting plays spliced in. You get to see Steve's reactions to when I say something ridiculous. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And overall, just a lot of great content dropping on the channel throughout the week. So you don't want to miss any of that, as we have finals coverage going on right now. The W season certainly in full swing. So if you want the combination of that, subscribe to the channel, folks. You don't want to miss out. You can follow me on Twitter at Nekias NBA. You can follow Steve on Twitter at SteveJones20. Join the Dunker Spot community on Twitter if you haven't already. Join us for our online Dunker Spot watch parties. The link is in the description. If you want live basketball analysis, particularly during these finals, commercials come up. We're breaking down what we just saw. If something popped for us. So if you want that kind of second screen element to your viewing experience, you want to have some fun with a great group of people, also learn a little bit more about basketball, come rock with us. But beyond that, we will catch y'all later in the week.
Good show, Nekias. Think people are going to yell every weekend now?